To passing a $1.3 trillion federal spending bill.
Hey, boy.
Hi, Mike. On camera, huh?
Yeah.
There's a lot of animals in the Capitol.
And dogs, too. Some four-legged.
This has been a months-long process.
We burned the midnight oil and ended up with a bill that is really good for the American people.
Whoever designed this building did not like people. Politics or people.
We're going there, and we're standing here.
I will never sign another bill like this again. I'm not going to do it again. Nobody read it. It's only hours old.
Just like the Hotel California. Check in, you can never.
All right, guys. This is our meeting. See you later.
Worried about anyone calling me inhumane for not spending more money than we have today and forcing our grandchildren to bail us out in the future. I think the inhumane and irresponsible action is to continue to spend so much more money than we have. It's even more disturbing when the flow of information is from leadership to lobbyists and then to members.
Hey, how are you? What happened with the omnibus?
Do we have enough time? So many things that are not right with the omnibus. First thing is the process. 2,232 pages, not that we're counting, were given to us, I think is around 8 o'clock at night. Basically gave us 8 hours, 10 hours to read over 2,000 pages. That's the equivalent of 2 entire Bibles. Anyone that voted for the omnibus bill, that says they read the bill, is a flat out liar. Why would you be voting for something that you haven't read, or that your staff and yourself combined can't read in that amount of time? Most all the decisions around this place are made by a few people at the very top. So what we have with the omnibus is 2 of the Senate leaders, 2 House leaders get in a room, smoke-filled room, and they're going to figure out how we're going to spend $1.3 trillion without the input of any other congressional members or United States senators. Now that's not good representative government, wouldn't you say? I voted against the omnibus bill for a multitude of reasons. However, it contained $350,000 of tax money from hardworking Americans to study the sex life of Japanese quail. This is the kind of stuff that you get in an omnibus bill. They put some things in there that you like and a whole bunch of things in there that you don't like. If you had legislation to study the sex life of Japanese quail, standalone, I hope to God it wouldn't pass. But you put it in an omnibus bill and it passes.
So we pass an omnibus, members go home to their district, and they are getting excoriated for passing a spending bill that large with a Republican House, a Republican Senate, and a Republican White House. How do we tell people that it really isn't that bad, or that we're going to save money somehow? On a number of spending bills, I have read about provisions that affect my district before I ever heard anything from Republican leadership. They will talk to lobbyists and get something in the bill to help the lobbyists, and then the lobbyists will talk to the media, and I read about it, but I have no participation in what goes into a spending bill, and I'd venture to say that 95% of the members here don't know what's in the spending bill until we're supposed to vote on it, and even after we've voted on it, frankly. They put the balanced budget amendment on the calendar for the week that we get back from Easter recess. They don't hold any hearings on the balanced budget amendment. They don't have town halls and go on the radio and message on it. We're talking about a change to the Constitution. And they have a balanced budget amendment change to the Constitution that's just, people have read it for a few hours before they go vote on it without any input from the American public. It was a total farce.
What's wrong with the flippin' swamp is you got a bunch of people up there who are hell-bent on perpetuating their own power, their own name, their C-list celebrity status, their chairmanships, their leadership position, etc. And I take Mr. Trump at his word. that he wants to drain the swamp and make Washington work better for Americans.
The Read It Act would require that members have at least 2 minutes per page to review a bill prior to the bill coming to the vote on the full floor of the House, which sounds redundant because there's a 72-hour rule, but the 72-hour rule can be waived by a super subset, and frequently is, and we're trying to structure Read It in a way such that the entire House would have to vote to waive their right to review the bill, which would then create a circumstance wherein the voters knew who wasn't terribly concerned with actually diligently reviewing the bills.
Where's that swamp critter? Hey, Ken, how you doing? I don't have any brownies. I'm sorry.
I'll bring some with me next time.
That's good.
When we pass the Republican rules at the beginning of this session, one of the rules is that we will not appropriate money to unauthorized programs. And of course, in this omnibus bill, we waived that rule so that we could appropriate money to unauthorized programs. And we do that every time. Whatever rule we pass at the beginning of a session can be waived before we violate it in any bill.
So I gave you a copy of the new text, and what this does, it incorporates the amendment that we had talked about earlier.
And the amendment is designed to keep them from being able to waive the rule.
And so I've talked to their legislative director, and she's made him aware that you'll be reaching out to him.
But she didn't give you any sort of read?
She didn't. I sent her the text and a good explanation. So.
And she didn't give you any hand tip?
No. I can ask her.
Oh, I would love to try to, peek behind the curtain, because what I'm afraid of is that we'll go, and we're obviously reaching across the aisle here, that we'll go in and we'll walk into somebody who, for whatever reason, isn't interested, and we will have wasted that one silver bullet, which is the unveiling. Right? This is not partisan.
Having both sides, for sure.
No shit.
Leadership never wants us to vote against the rule, never. And we were so against the omnibus that a group of us voted against the rule. And I don't want to get too much in the weeds, but Democrats, they always are going to vote against the rule. So then Republicans, of which there are 240, I believe, in our conference, 218 need to vote for a rule. So if you can get 30 Republicans to vote against the rule, you can stop the bill. At least send it back to the rule.
In theory.
In theory.
Whenever the Democrats vote in large measure for a bill, like this omnibus, Nancy Pelosi has members in her pocket, and she will just send them down to vote for the rule so that she knows the rule can pass. And they did in this case. They probably got 15 or 16 Dems to vote for the rule. There were enough Republicans vote against the rule, and you could see the Democrats just huddled around Nancy Pelosi, and she would just send the next one down to make sure that the rule passed. When it comes to bankrupting the country, they cooperate all the time.
Great point.
So I get a message from the whip's office. Missed you on the balanced budget amendment whip check. How do you plan to vote? And my response was, my back was seriously injured after the Omni passed. The weight of this country's debt has crushed my ability to stand tall and proud with my fellow Republicans. I am undecided on the BBA because I think it is a cynical attempt to pretend that House R's really care about our country's debt. We had no real hearings to explore different versions, and without marketing this effort to Americans, we will not get a 2/3 vote to realistically pass this BBA out of the House. So that was my feeling on both of the bills.
Did he respond?
No.
What do you think of the omnibus? What do you think of the omnibus? Well, there you go. There's your answer, Jack. Look at that. Anybody here for the omnibus? Come over to the trough. Come on over. Ah, you guys got sense. They're not that stupid. They got sense.
The committees here are ranked based on how much money you can raise if you're on that committee. An A committee, you should be able to raise you know, $500,000 easily every election cycle from the lobbyists if you're on an A committee. I'm on B and C committees, but they're important committees to my constituents. The Transportation Committee, right? Our roads and bridges should be pretty important, right? It turns out there aren't a whole lot of lobbyists here in Washington, D.C. interested in roads and bridges, though, and so it's a B committee. Veterans Affairs, that's a C committee. What if people back home knew that taking care of our veterans was considered the lowest priority committee in Congress?
Are you closer to God when you are in Colorado, or are you closer to God when you're in the swamp? God's up there. So when you're in Colorado, you're just a little closer to God. And so the legislation that comes out of this place is really, really bad.
This is my congressional pin, and you'll see a lot of people around here wearing them. I try not to wear it all the time. I call it precious.
I had to go to the restroom. Patrick came in there. I says, Patrick, come on, man, you know that bill doesn't do that. It doesn't deport anybody. It doesn't break up families. This is what he does.
Politics.
I mean, she makes way more sense than half the people in Congress.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute.
Episode 3. I know we're going to get the word prostitute in there somehow, Razika.
Well, in September of 2012, John Boehner did a fundraiser for me. I got elected and took office in November, and by December of 2012, I had joined a coup to get rid of John Boehner. It didn't take me long, maybe 2 or 3 weeks after being sworn in, to see how messed up this place was. There's a way to order things, but what we have here is chaos.
Yeah, that chaos, you know, you hate to think that's by design, but sometimes you think it is by design. Crisis management in government leads to $21 trillion in debt. Crisis management leads to poor policies. And when we had that 2,232 page come out, that bill for the omnibus on March 23rd, that not one person read, I've been on the record as saying if anybody voted for that bill, that's legislative malpractice, and they don't deserve to be here and have the trust of the American people.
Of course, I think that's all bullcrap. You shouldn't vote for an omnibus. You shouldn't vote for anything you haven't had time to read. I remember the first time I voted no when the party was voting yes, a staff member came to me on the floor and told me that I had made a mistake. And I said, well, actually, that's how I meant to vote. And she said, well, if you want to know what's in this bill, you can go over to the leadership table and they'll explain this bill to you. And I said, I read the bill, that's why I'm voting no. And she said, well, we're not whipping the vote tonight, so you can vote how you want on this one. This is a staffer. I've been here like a week, and she's giving me permission to vote my conscience, to vote for my constituents. It was ridiculous, but that was just the tip of the iceberg.
The system is just broken.
Lobbyists have a legitimate function and a function that's not so legitimate. The side that is a little less desirable or a little slimier is the money side of politics and the lobbyist's role in the money side. One wise old sage said was the mother's milk of politics, and that is money. And you can't run for office without money, and so lobbyists provide part of that money.
We got introduced, I'm not going to mention any names, by somebody that was in charge of one of the congressional committees, the outside one, and they said, let's get down to it. You're here because of the help we've given you. Your job is to raise money, to give it to the Republican Party, and if you want a committee chairmanship, it's going to cost X amount of dollars. I was highly offended because I didn't come up here to play that game. You know, I don't think you should have to pay to play. If you do what you're supposed to do, and you stand true to the values that you ran on, you'll get reelected by the people that sent you here. Take care. Proud of you.
The week after the election in November, there's an orientation week. All the new members are invited to DC, and there is reception after reception after reception. But it's all designed to introduce members to how DC works, introduce members to the fact that there is a good life. If you play ball with the lobbyists, if you play ball with the power structure in DC, there's a very good life that you can lead. If you don't play ball, there's a set of punishments, there's an ostracization. whatever that word is, they will do their best to isolate you and make sure that they take you out and that other members are elected that can play ball or that will play ball with the lobbyists and the power structure.
I had a lobbyist in the medical device industry, and he said, Thomas, you're different from these other congressmen. You're smart, you know what you're doing, you understand technology, you're wasting your time on those B and C committees. You need to be on an A committee. In fact, you need to be on the Ways and Means Committee. And my lobbyist friends and I are prepared to raise the amount of money it's going to take to get you on the Ways and Means Committee. I wanted to run out of there. I mean, and when I did get out of the basement of the Capitol Hill Club after his proposal, I was trying to find a shower. I had to get the scum off. Just being part of that conversation felt dirty.
My assessment is $300,000. That's what I'm supposed to pay to rent my position on these 3 committees. And note, your assessment is subject to change based on leadership roles. In other words, if you get more power here, they're going to charge you more. And if you can't pay today, just sign this piece of paper pledging that you will make this payment in full before the due date. In fact, they'll fold this sucker up and stick it in your pocket on the floor of the House at votes, just to remind you that you owe some money if you want to keep your committee assignment. Now, renting committee assignments and chairmanships, it should be illegal. If you did this sort of thing in a city council meeting or a state legislature, they would perp walk you in handcuffs in front of the evening news. But it's legal here. Because who's going to make a law stopping us? Even the Constitution says that the House and the Senate shall make their own rules. Over the years, I suppose my bill is about $1.2 million. I paid $6,000. That was the first month that I was here. I didn't know any better. Ostensibly, the money goes for a good cause. Look, it's to keep us in the majority. And the Democrats do the same thing. It's to take back the majority. The problem is the incentive structure is set up to get you to sell out to lobbyists because they're the only ones who have the currency you need, which is campaign dollars, to buy your committee assignment. It's a terrible choice. Why should you have to do this? You're faced with coming up here and prostituting yourself just so that you can get a committee assignment where you can represent your constituents the best.
I'm a capitalist, and I don't think there's anything wrong with corporations, businesses trying to make more money. I think it's what drives this country. I think it's produced more wealth in the United States and in the world. So capitalism is a good idea. When you use government to unfairly give your group or corporation or business an advantage over others that are out there that don't try to use that access either to fence out or to increase profits, that's bad. And oftentimes that's what lobbyists are involved in, is trying to use the system that we have to benefit themselves in an unfair way. And I was looking right in the camera. I was talking to the American people that time. They like that.
Millions of people have died to make this country something better than it was, and now it's my responsibility if all goes to hell.
That's right. Let's go save a nation, Tom.
You can either quit or you can fight, and I'm not ready to quit.
And with that, I will tell you that there is no way in heck that I'm not going to be back here in 2019. Attacks aren't true, and I can prove that. With this in mind, not for fear of losing, but for lack of love for our great nation, today I am announcing that I will not seek re-election.